Well, good morning. It is good to be with you all this morning. Thank you for coming to this meeting. And as he already mentioned, our topic today is what ministry workers need to hear. And I hope this is an encouragement to you and a blessing as you work the trenches, as you're out there on the front lines. But I was thinking about this topic. I was thinking, bus workers, Sunday school teachers, church janitors, maybe you're here. Is there any church janitors among? All right, we got one here. Thank you for what you do. Church janitors, missionaries, pastors' wives. There's just an array of different types of ministries that are represented here. Bible college staff and teachers, whatever aspect of ministry you're involved in. I want to mention, this makes me think of Moses. Moses and the Israelites on their way to the promised land. Can you imagine how discouraged Moses would have felt many, many, many times on that 40-year journey? His ministry wasn't a bus ministry. It was a walking ministry. A walking ministry. And I can only imagine the times Moses must have thought like I have thought. I just feel like I'm spinning my chariot wheels. I'm just spinning my chariot wheels. We're not getting anywhere. We're not any closer to the goal. We still have years to wait to finish this. How did he stick it out? What kept him going? He didn't have Desert and Outreach bus convention, ministry convention to come to find out how to do this, and get some words of encouragement. He didn't have that. What helped Moses make it 40 years in that kind of ministry? And as I was thinking about that, and I thought about all the problems he faced, accusations, one person or another was always upset with Moses about something, whether the food, the water, the heat, the problems with the attacks from other enemies. There was always murmuring, always we should have stayed in Egypt. He had a tough group of people to deal with. What kept him going? And as I thought about that, it came to my mind that really what kept him going was his connection to God and his love for those people. That was really what it boiled down to. And he said, Lord, if you don't go with us, I'm not taking another step. I've got to be sure of your presence. I can't do it. I don't have the wisdom. I don't have the strength. We're not going to make it. And God showed him all of his goodness. He got to see at least the back of God and the glory of God. And he saw the pillar of fire and the cloud each day. Just a reminder, I'm with you, Moses. I'm with you. I'm going to give you the strength. You can make it because I'm with you. I'm your source of strength. And it was really that and the love for those Israelites. Many times God said, I'm gonna start over. I'm gonna wipe these people out, and I'm gonna start over, and I'm gonna give a new people with a new heart. And Moses would say, if you do that, you've got to blot me out too. You've got to blot me out too. He loved those people with all their problems and with all their complaints. Love for God and love for people is what got him through 40 years in the wilderness. And sometimes we just need to be reminded about the purpose of it all. How that what we are doing is pleasing to God. And to remember, he is with us.
When then they asked for us to fill in for the session, I felt very underqualified to do it. I wasn't a bus captain. And so I'm like, what can we say to bus captains? I mean, these are the people that are doing it day in and day out. And what do I have to say to them? And I remembered Eric was a bus captain at one time. And when we started dating, he had me come on the bus with him, and I helped him work on the bus route and stuff like that. And but I thought, you know what? We all are in ministry in one way or another. And I was a janitor at Beavertown before we got married, and even after we got married, I was a janitor there for a couple years and helped in secretary work. And whatever kind of ministry you're in, not one ministry is better than another. And being a missionary, I'm not better doing what I'm doing for the Lord now than I was when I was a janitor at the church. But whatever it is, every single one of us needs to hear certain things, just like Moses had to hear from God to stay in it. And so we sat together and we thought, okay, what did we need to hear over the past 20 years of ministry in Honduras? What did we need to hear from God or from other people in the trenches with us? And so today we want to share with you some of the things that God has helped us stay in the ministry and stay in the trenches. And so the very first thing, and it's on your list, is what you're doing matters. What you're doing matters. Don't ever allow the devil to tell you that what you're doing is insignificant. No matter what it is. Because when you're doing something for the Lord, it's a calling. And in our circles, we might not call bus workers or outreach ministers that they're called, but they are. It's a calling. God has placed that on your heart. And so many times and I've been in services where they've said, oh, we have royalty among us today. The missionaries are here. And so many, and I'm not playing that down, and it makes us feel good. But at the same time, I think, what about the people that are working in your church Saturday after Saturday, Sunday after Sunday? They're the ones that are here growing the kingdom of God in Jerusalem where God has called them to be. God has given me the privilege to travel overseas and live overseas, reaching people of a different culture. But he's called you to stay in Jerusalem and never allow the devil to tell you that your ministry is any less than the pastor's ministry. You say the pastor, like the preacher, like the guy in charge of the church. Yeah, his ministry is not any more important than your ministry because God called him to pastor and God has called you to serve on the bus.
Letter B, you are changing and impacting lives by what you're doing. There's so many broken homes, so many broken hearts that are on your bus, that are in your congregations, and you're touching them. You're impacting them. You're helping to set their eternal destiny towards heaven. And making God look attractive to them. That's a wonderful thing that you're doing. You might be the only person they come into contact with that shows them the gospel. And I know we live in what we call a reached nation. But there are still many people in this reached nation of America who really don't know how to be saved. They don't know what it meant when Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead. And they need someone, and you're that person in their life that God has brought together to explain to them how to be saved.
Like Brother Ruckler was saying this morning about the
prevenient
yes,
grace.
We are that grace in their life. Yeah.
And you're raising the probability of someone getting saved because of what you're doing. You're raising the probability that because they're hearing the gospel, they just might get saved and impact eternity forever. You know, they could get saved listening to a TV preacher. That is a possibility. They could get saved reading a tract that's handed to them or that they find somewhere. A friendship could be a possibility, but your impact in their lives, being involved in their lives, gives a greater probability than a tract will, than scanning through a TV channel and hearing someone preach. You personally involved in their lives raises the chances that they will find Christ. I was reminded of this just a few days ago. A girl from one of our churches there in Honduras told me that while we were away in Guatemala on a trip, just a few weeks ago, her father passed away. He was an extreme alcoholic man, and he had a drinking buddy. The two of them would get together often and drink and carouse around. I mean, just wildlife. And just a few weeks ago, her father suddenly passed away from a heart attack. And she was so troubled by this because she didn't know if he had a chance to pray. No, he didn't have a chance because when he passed out, they tried to get some people to come and help him, and by that time he was unconscious, and he never said a prayer. He never repented of his sins in that moment, and just this has been bothering her for so long. But his drinking buddy got sick, very, very sick. Matter of fact, he was sick during the funeral of Rosa's father, and he couldn't even come to the funeral. And they started asking, where is he? Where's my dad's buddy? And they started asking around, and someone said, well, he's sick. You need to go visit him. And so her and her brother went to this man's house. You can call it a house, or really just a shack. I mean, it was just like a tarp and some sticks around, and he lived out in the bush and really had no family, nobody. And he was so sick, so bad off, he couldn't even get out of bed. There was nobody to help him. And so when Rosa found this out, we were gone, so she couldn't call us, and so she called another pastor friend that she knew in the community to come help. And they got up into this little shack, and he said, I'm dying. Can you help me? Can you get me to a hospital? But before they got him out of the little shack, the pastor started witnessing to him and said, you need Jesus in your heart. Would you like to give your heart to God? And he said, I would. And he prayed right there. 3.5 hours later, he was gone at the hospital, had died. And I said, Rosa, you helped someone make it to heaven. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, had I not been there and found out how bad off he was and called that pastor, where would that man be? She said, I feel bad about my dad. I don't know if he made it to heaven, if he was able to pray maybe in his conscience when he was dying. I don't know, but at least this man got saved. This man, in the nick of time, in the last hours of his life, found the Lord. And she's not a pastor. She's not an evangelist. But every Christian is a witness. Every Christian is a witness. And God used her life in that moment to save that man from his sins.
Point number C on your list. I don't think I mentioned point number A. Maybe I did. You're fulfilling the Great Commission, just in case we missed that one. That's for A. B, you're changing and impacting lives. And then number C, your role as a minister helps to stimulate the church to be active, evangelistic, and outward focused. You're putting positive pressure on the other Christians in church to go out and do the same. We always talk about negative pressure, but as you minister and as you work on the bus, you're putting positive pressure on the other church people to do the same. One of the things that we've noticed in our ministry, when somebody gets saved, they don't look like us right away. There's a lot of things that they still have to learn as they go through discipleship. But the minute they get involved in ministry in church, whether it's greeting somebody at the door, or whether it's leading singing, or whether it's just taking up the offering, you can start watching them grow spiritually. And it's never failed. We can actually gauge our church, and I know the culture is a little bit different, but I think it would work here in the States as well. You can gauge somebody's spirituality, at least in Honduras, depending on how involved they are willing to be in church. And so if we are involved in reaching out to our community, did you know that God could probably reach people a lot quicker and a lot better than we can if he did it on his own? He could send angels and the whole world would get saved probably immediately. But he chose us, the lowly humans, to reach out to people. And I have a theory about this. I think God did that not to benefit himself, not to benefit the kingdom, but to benefit us. Because when he uses us, when we allow him to use us, we grow. We grow spiritually. And so when God calls you to do a ministry, look at it as God trying to help you be a better, not just a Christian, but a better person, reaching out. Ministering is a benefit to us just as much as it is a benefit to everybody else. If you get your church people involved in ministry, you will watch them grow spiritually. Somebody coming in Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and sitting in the pew and praising God, they're not going to grow as quick, they're not going to be as strong as somebody that has to depend on God to reach out to others. Because like Eric said last night, it's in the trenches. And when we're in the trenches, that's when we depend on God even more. So if you want to see your church grow, get them involved in ministry. You guys are all, I'm talking to the choir today, you're all involved in one ministry or another. But bring other people in. Put the positive pressure, and that's why it matters what you're doing, is because you're putting positive pressure on other Christians to do the same.
We started kind of witnessing, I guess you could say, to some Mormon missionaries.
It was witnessing.
we were, going back and forth, sharing doctrine and things, and I asked these two boys, I said, you guys do 2-year terms, right? And it's pretty much mandatory for Mormons to send their young people for 2 years to the mission field. I said, how many converts have you made? Oh, they said, usually it's just 1 or 2 a year. And I mean, it's every day. They're knocking on doors and they're out in the streets. And they'll have maybe 1 or 2 baptisms a year, he said, out of all of that. I said, well, then why do you do it? He said, well, it's really not about making converts. He said, for us, it's about us young people learning our faith and becoming grounded in knowing what we believe. That's really what it's all about, is grounding us in our doctrine. And, I thought about that, and I thought, that needs to kind of be our mentality as well. Yes, we want to reach souls, but the more people we get involved in our churches, the more they have to defend what they believe, the more they've got to study God's word to know what the Bible teaches and give answers to people that are there asking them, why do you do this and why do you believe this? It really strengthens the church when we're involved in ministry. Instead of just sitting and soaking on the bench, when we're in the trenches, oh my, we've got to really depend on God. We pray more, fast more, believe more, and see more happening because we are involved in ministry.
And really, if we want to keep our kids, if we want to keep the next generation, we better involve them in our ministries. We better model to them what loving people really looks like. And I think it's very important. I've watched it over and over again. When young people are involved, whether it's in their parents' ministry or whether it's in the ministry of the church, again, they're growing spiritually and they're being grounded spiritually. And that's how we're going to keep our kids. It's not going to be playing sports or doing this thing or that thing or the other. It's about getting them involved in ministry and showing them what God's heart is really all about.
Number 2, it's going to be hard. We talked about this last night.
And it sounds like we're being really negative about ministry right now. And last night when Eric was preaching, I was like, we try not to be negative about ministry because I want people to love ministry, right? But we're not trying to recruit anybody here because you all are involved in ministry. So we want to be so transparent, right? So many times we try to put our best foot forward and we make everything look so glamorous. And we don't want to be negative because there's nothing better than being involved in ministry. And you guys know that because you guys are doing it. So we're not trying to be negative. No. We want to be real.
real positive about ministry.
Right.
Positive. We want to be positive. But the reality is, it's trench work. It's hard. It's not always easy. And you will be disappointed. But stick it out by staying connected to God and loving people. When you fall in love with people, it's hard to walk away from them. Because you love them.
Yep.
With all their problems, with all their baggage. You just love them. And you can't just easily walk away from it all. Keep your eyes on Christ rather than all the problems. Like Peter in the storm, okay? He got his eyes on the waves and the wind and all of those things and started sinking. You got to stay connected to Jesus and the big picture. He's in control of it all. He's working through the hardships. You know, I was going through a time recently where I was thinking and getting this thought of, in Honduras, everybody's religious. Everybody believes in God. I don't know that I've met one atheist.
50% evangelicals, 50% Catholics. So everybody goes to church.
Everyone says they're in church somewhere. Everyone believes in God. Everybody's religious. And I was struggling with this. Do I need to be here? You know, who wants to be saved? Who needs this message? Are we wasting our time? And I was just saying, oh, God, would you bring in some hungry hearts that really want God? Because I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Just the other day, I had gone to the church to get some tables out and closed up the church. I was walking back to my house, and a pickup truck stopped on the road. The guy hangs out the window and says, Pastor, I've been wanting to talk to you. And he said, I need God. I was shocked. He said, I need God. I want to talk to you. I want you to take my number. Will you call me? I said, sure. His name's Ismael. He's a mechanic there and not too far from our church. And we had seen each other. I had talked to him a time or two, and invited him to church or whatever. So he knew I was a pastor. But to have him stop the car and hang out the window and said, Pastor, I'm so glad to see you. I need Jesus. I said, well, God's on your trail. God's speaking to you. I said, Ishmael, you need to come to church. And that following Sunday, he and his wife showed up on the front seat. I mean, God was dealing with him. I was hoping that Sunday he would come and pray to be saved. He's an alcoholic. He is struggling with alcohol. He didn't come to pray, but we're staying in contact. And he said, I want to keep coming. I want to keep coming. And it was just a reminder, there are hungry hearts. You can get blinded by discouragement. Nobody wants to know. Nobody cares. No one wants to get saved. That's a lie. That is a lie. There are people saying, I need Jesus. I want to be saved. And God is going to speak to them as well. Galatians 6:9, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not.
I think this morning I was convicted again with Brother Buckler's sermon. Lord, lead me to the person you're already working on. If we would pray, that's going to be my new prayer. If we would pray, Lord, take us to the people that you're already working on. Because it's not our work. We're just fulfilling what God wants us to do. That's all we're doing. Because he does the work. And so that's my new prayer. And that's not even in our notes, obviously. But my new prayer, Lord, lead me. Show me the people that you're already working on. Not that the other ones don't matter. They do matter. But I put that in God's hand. Lord, lead me to the people that you're already working on.
Trench work starts working on your mind. And it's hard to see anything else besides those trench walls that you're in. And you can get easily discouraged, and you can easily get burned out on ministry. We've all, I think, been there. I know we've been through that. You've got to be very careful about burnout in ministry. It's dangerous, not just for you and your family, but for your people. They cannot afford you being burned out. Because when burnout starts happening, you get negative. All you see is the negative of what you're doing and who they are and the things that get on your nerves. You just start getting cynical about everything. And that starts showing up in your attitude towards your people. They sense that. They feel that. They can perceive, there's something wrong with the pastor. He's not as friendly. He's not as fun. He's not as nice to be around. Something's going on. And a lot of times they're maybe too embarrassed to ask. And you don't want to burden them with how you feel about ministry. But they can start feeling that they're the pastor's killjoy. Something's going on. And we're making life miserable for him. So for everybody's safety and sanity, avoid burnout with all your might.
If you can. If you know how, let us know.
Here's some of the signs. Here's some of the signs of burnout. Exhaustion. Exhaustion. You work all week, and this isn't just for pastors. This is for the bus captains and Sunday school teachers, You guys work all week at your job, and Saturday rolls around. It's your only day off, really, to do your honey-do list at home, to sleep in, get rested up, just take a break from it all. And instead, you've got to go calling. You've got to go out for several hours and deal with people and hear their excuses and, pray with them and visit hours with them and, whatever. And, man, that gets old. That gets old after a while. You need a break, and you get exhausted doing the same thing week in, week out, and it just seems like there's never a break. There's never, a time just to come up for air, and you can get exhausted. Then it becomes negativity is the second sign. Negativity.
And if you're a fixer, you want to fix all the problems. For that person, it's hard when negative things start popping up. You see the negative things a lot quicker than other people. So if you're a fixer, be aware of that. You can't fix everything. As much as we would love to, we really can't. And just be careful with that, because when you start seeing the negative things, you're even more tired. You're exhausted even more. So be careful of that. We went through a time in our ministry where we were seeing the negative things. Are we making a difference? Are people changing? Are, just seeing all the negative stuff. And we had to sit down and say, okay, this is negative, but what's the positive in that? Right? So, we're living here in Honduras. We don't have water 3 times a week. But, man, we have water. We could be in Africa where they don't have any water for months on end. So be careful with that. Try to find the positive stuff in your ministry, especially when the devil tries to make those negative things so big in your mind.
And that can often turn into insomnia is the third point there. Insomnia. You can't sleep. You can't sleep. You're obsessed with the problems. You feel like and you toss and turn and you can't get your rest. And because you don't get your rest, the next day you get up, you're grumpy, even all the more, and it just gets more and more negative, and it just goes down, a downward spiral. And the last one is reduced productivity. Because you're exhausted, because you're negative, because you're not sleeping well and taking care of yourself, you don't produce. You don't produce. And because you're not producing, then you feel guilty. Then you feel it just keeps piling on, and it's a vicious cycle. Yeah. Vicious cycle. Signs of burnout. If you're seeing it in your ministry, try to do something about it quickly. Don't keep going. Maybe you need a break. Maybe you just need a week off. Maybe you need to go to a cabin like I did, and just spend some time alone with God and get refocused. But God can help you. If you're in that trench thinking, I'm about ready to quit. This is not working. I'm burned out. Here's how to prevent burnout. Here's some things you can do to prevent it. Delegate. You can't do everything by yourself. You need help. Even if they're not a godly Christian who you can put on your platform in the pulpit as an example, maybe they don't meet all those requirements, there are still things out there in the church that they can get involved in. Even sinners can serve some way, somehow, in a church setting. And find that place for them and plug them in. And delegate as much as you can. And something encouraging that has happened in our church recently, we had a lady come up and she said, Pastor, you know what we need in this church? And I was a little nervous when people say, you know what we need in this church? What? Yeah, what do we need? She said, we need prayer and fasting every Saturday from 8:30 to noon in our church. I admire that. I said, I thought, I'm going to be the only one coming every Saturday from 8:30 to 12. And you want to start this. And I'm thinking, all right, let's start it, but you're in charge. You're in charge.
And she was a new convert.
She was a new convert.
So she didn't look exactly like us,
Is this going to last?
Yeah.
8:30 to 12 every Saturday. You're in charge. You got to make this happen. And she took it by the horns. I mean, she started getting people involved. She said, we need to come for prayer and fasting. So 8:30 to 12. First couple of weeks, we had a good group, and then it started dwindling down. I thought, this is going to fizzle out. I know how this goes. It's going to fizzle. But it didn't fizzle. And she just said this the last Saturday in prayer and fasting. She said, this is a calling for me. I feel like this is a calling. If there's anything in this church that I feel I need to do, it's this Saturday, prayer and fasting, even if I'm the only person here. And she has really got this going, and it's going close to a year now that they've been meeting Saturday after Saturday for prayer.
Even when we were on deputation, they were still.
Yes. And I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love having a Saturday morning where I can just go to church and pray and fast. And I can take my time going through all the things I need to tell God about. And I'm in no rush, and there's no phone calls, and there's no one I have to go.
Because everybody knows that you're at fast and prayer. And
I'm at prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
It's been great for me. It's been great for our church. We have seen so many miracles, and every time something happens, they say, God's hearing our prayer. God's rewarding our prayer and fasting. God's helping us. And I said, absolutely, God is working. It's exciting. But delegate those things to them. Get them involved, and they'll get tied in and help lift your load.
And she's put positive pressure on the other people in church. And so maybe some of them are starting to come because they're feeling guilty that Hermana Carla's coming. So, she's the new convert. We've been here for so many years. We need to join her. And so they've starting to become more faithful to that because the new convert is doing it. So we might be a little scared of new converts because we don't know what direction they're going to go. But at the same time, with right leadership, they can be a positive pressure on us old saints that are used to sitting on the bench, coming in Sunday morning, leaving Sunday night, say every week. So use those new converts in your church and watch them grow as they help other saints in your church grow as well.
Second one is prioritize. Prioritize. Spend your energy, your focus on the big things. Okay, you can't handle everything in the church, but keep your focus on the big things. What are the big things? Evangelism is a big thing. If we let that drop, that's going to affect a lot of other areas in our churches. We've got to keep that the main thing. So prioritize your work. Prayer and fasting, as I said, it's helpful. It works. It's really our guns, in this war. And if we're not using them, we're going to be a weak church. We're not going to be advancing. So prioritize. Keep the big things the big things. Don't get, bogged down in these side issues that, entangle us and consume our time. And really, it's of no benefit for the church and for eternity. And so keep your focus by prioritizing.
When the church gets busy, one of the first things to go is evangelism. And that's really sad. Because when that happens, we can be busy and maybe having picnics and ball games. And again, it sounds like Eric and Hannah are against sports and all that stuff. We're really not. But we got to keep the main things, the main things. And if evangelism goes away, and I'm coming back to keeping our kids. If we want to keep our kids, playing ball with them is not going to keep them. What's going to keep them is evangelizing with you. So make sure that if you only have a certain amount of energy to do something, spend it on evangelism, on the people in your churches, not on extra events.
Rest and recharge is the last there under that list, how to prevent burnout. Rest and recharge. Take a break, even if it's 2 weeks or whatever you need. Talk to your church board. Let them know where you're at. Just explain that you need some time alone. You need to get refreshed. And they'll understand. Hopefully they understand. Maybe there's some boards that won't understand. But I think most of our boards would understand. And they would back you up. And they would say, thank you, Pastor, for sharing your heart. We understand and we want to support you. You need a break. Take a sabbatical, or whatever. Do what you need to do to get refreshed and re-strengthened. Coming to bus convention should be a rest and recharge as well. I hope you get recharged. I've been getting recharged just being here. And fellowship with others and talking about evangelism. We need that. Remember your purpose. Remember, this is about eternal souls. It's about pleasing God and doing what He wants us to do. And He will sustain you. He will strengthen you. He will help you make it through this.
Talking about resting, a lot of times people that are involved in ministry, we feel guilty about stepping back a little bit. I'm one of the first ones on that list. It could be a motivation to stay in. I get it. But sometimes we feel guilty to step back a little bit. And sometimes it's the best thing you can do for your ministry when you're burnt out and you recognize that, to say, okay, I'm actually doing more harm to the kids, to the people that I'm ministering to, and I need to step back. Now, the good thing about that, if you deal with burnout with delegating, and you've already trained somebody with you from the get-go to ride the bus, to visit the people, the nice thing about it is you have somebody that can step in your place. A lot of times, as when we minister, we feel ownership of something, and it's hard for us to step back from it. I'm one of those people, but you have to realize, is it about us or about God's kingdom? And if it's about His kingdom, then we're going to have to learn to step back, take a break. And it's okay. Don't feel guilty about it, because the devil's going to make you feel guilty. But if I step back, it's not going to work the way I want it to work. But if you had somebody with you from the very beginning that you're mentoring, it's going to be easier for you to step back. So both of those two things work together.
And it would be better to shut down your bus routes for 2 weeks and go take a rest and last another 3 years or 4 years or whatever in ministry than to say, I can't, there's no one here, and we just got to keep going, and you just push through until you burn out, and then there is no more ministry for the next 3 years. You think about it that way. This is for their good, it's for your good, this is for the kingdom. We need you. We can't lose you. So do what you need to do to get the rest and recharge that you need to stay in the trenches and keep fighting.
And you have my permission not to feel guilty.
Yes. Number 3, your kids/people are more than just numbers. They're more than just numbers. Don't ever allow yourself to get into a rut where you're just going through the motions. You herd the people in like cattle. You herd them out after the service. You check your box. You fulfilled your responsibilities and go home. When it all becomes robotic and mechanical and just, numbers and that's it, you start hurting people. The difference between a robot and a human is a human can love. A robot can't. Human can love. And when we lose the love, that's what it's all about. When we lose that love for people, it's all mechanical. And that's dangerous. And it can break a lot of hearts. When I was frustrated and feeling a little burned out, you just see all the negative, and people get that.
Yeah, they see it. Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things when you love people, I was talking to a lady out here this morning, and she was talking about how hard it is these days especially with discipline with the children. But I remember one little girl, some of you might have heard me tell this story before, but one little girl, Darling, she was the gang leader of our kids' Sunday school, right? All the kids did exactly what Darling told them to do. And she wasn't a little angel. I mean, she came to Sunday school to disrupt the class. She comes from a poor family, lives over the hill from the Sunday school there in Las Uvas, and she was just a terror. And one day, she was sitting in Sunday school, and I was probably just fed up with Darling. But I had treated her with love the whole time she was coming. I was always, she would come and I would give her a hug. And a lot of times I just want a hug. And Darling, one day in Sunday school, I was telling the story. And I looked over and Darling just took a little girl's hair that was sitting in front of her and just yanked her hair. And the girl just started wailing. And I looked at Darling as firm as I could do it. And I said, "You don't do that and you apologize immediately." And Darling looked at me. I don't think anybody had ever corrected her. And she looked at me, and I'm like, "We're not moving on from this lesson until you apologize to the girl." And so all the kids were looking at her, waiting to see what Darling was going to do. And Darling goes, "Lo siento." And I went on with the lesson. And in that moment, the devil said to me, "You'll never see that girl again." And guess what? She's not going to bring that 12 kids that she brings across that mountain. You'll never see any of them again in Sunday school. And I went home defeated. And probably for the whole week, I felt like, "Lord, what are we doing? We're spinning our wheels. And we're not, sometimes I don't like saying that we see slow advancement in the kingdom, because I believe we're always moving forward in the kingdom of God. If we're doing what he wants us to do, we're always moving forward. But in our eyes, sometimes it seems like we're barely inching forward. And to us, sometimes it feels like we're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And I felt defeated all week long. Sunday afternoon, because at the time we were having afternoon services in Las Uvas, we got out of the car and I thought, I'll have maybe 1 or 2 kids in Sunday school this afternoon. And all of a sudden, I see Darling that was there early that Sunday with her gang come running out of the church and came right to me and gave me a hug, something she had never done before. And the Lord said, "See, you show them love. No matter what they do, you're here to love them." And they sense that. They know if you have to discipline them, they know it's coming from a place of love. And if you show that to them every day, they're going to see that. And when that time of discipline comes, the Lord's going to work on their heart. It might not seem like that to you, but God's got it. He's got it in hand. And so I encourage you, if we're going to stick it out, whether it's in bus ministry, whether it's on the mission field, whether it's in church, whether it's a small church or big church, if you show love to people, that's what's going to keep them coming back. It's not us. It's not the flowery words of the preacher. What's going to keep them coming back is the love that they can sense from you.
Love that they don't get in their homes. The blanks to fill in, make sure we get them all covered here. What kids need from you, give them your undivided attention. Give them your undivided attention.
Don't be on your phone. You go pick them up, you knock on the
Yes.
door, they hop up on the bus, and you're on your phone.
You only have a couple hours, a few hours a week to impact these kids on your bus or people in your church or whatever aspect of ministry it is. When we lose love, people just become, let me find it here. How did I say that? become numbers, a job, a burden. When we lose love, people just become numbers, a job, a burden. That was the
What
first
time
part.
are we supposed to end?
Oh, what time are we supposed to be out of here? Noon at the latest. All right.
Okay.
Okay, let's just run through this real quick.
You
so we
got
can
two
fill these in.
long-winded preachers at the same time? Like, we need 2 hours.
Number 2, be patient with them. They'll miss a lot of Sundays. They'll get on your nerves. They'll text you all hours of the day and night. Be patient with them. They're not used to rules and structure in their home. And it takes a lot of patience. Number 3, they want to be hugged. They want to be loved. Love on them. Give them a note of encouragement. Send them a verse. They often don't get love anywhere else but the church. They need you, number 4, to be their biggest influence. Mm-hmm. Their biggest influence. Mm-hmm. Outside of Saturday visits and Sunday morning pickups, you can invite them to your home. Build a relationship with these people. Be a more positive influence than their worldly friends are. And that's a high bar. But try your best to be a better and stronger influence than all the negative influence in their life. Number 5, remember, they are in a pit. They're in a pit. Their family has not set them up for spiritual success. They haven't had years of going to churches and camp meetings and all of the things we've grown up and all of the songs we've heard and all the sermons, and they haven't had that kind of background. And remember, they're in a pit where families, don't care about spiritual things. And they need you to understand that. Don't allow their family to intimidate you. Don't allow their family to intimidate you is number 7. And number 6 is remember they need directions. Number 6 is they need directions. Things explained to them. They need opportunities to ask you questions. Why you believe what you believe. Why you dress the way you dress. They want to ask those questions. Give them those opportunities to get direction and discipleship. All right, did we get through all those? Number 7, don't allow their family to intimidate you. Their parents may be gay. And that's intimidating. Okay? They may have been in jail. You might not even know why they were in jail. They may be on drugs. They may have AIDS. But don't allow their dirty appearance and their rough character, to keep you away. Keep showing up. Keep showing up. Build a relationship with them. Make them feel welcome just as they are. You are welcomed in this church. And that's where you can get a lot of other people involved in your church. Shake a hand, smile at them. We're glad you're here. Invite them over to their home and get to know them.
And remember, you're not just there for the kids. A lot of times we focus on the kids, but we want to reach the parents as well. And it can be intimidating, right? Because you don't know where they're coming from or their background or whatever. But when you go to knock on the door, try to build a relationship. And I think Brother Ward does an amazing job with that. We were able to go when we were in North Carolina on deputation and go visit different people there. And it's just build the relationship, not just with the kids, but with the parents as well. Because ultimately, we want the whole family, not just the kids. And the kids, so a lot of times, are the means to the family. When we started out our ministry, we started out with kids. We had 23 kids coming to church, and eventually, the parents would visit and stuff like that. So don't let the parents intimidate you, and make it a goal to reach the parents as well.
I'm sure you've all heard of Mahatma Gandhi. When in India, as a student, he read through the Gospels, and he thought to himself, maybe Christianity has the cure for the caste system that we suffer under here in India. So he decided to go to a church, an evangelical church, I think in Calcutta at the time. And he had all intentions to ask the pastor that morning how to become a Christian. But when he got to the door of the church, one of the ushers met him, stopped him, and he said, "You're not welcome here. this church is only for high caste Christians and white people, and you're neither. And I'm sorry, but you're not welcomed at this church," and turned him away. And as he left, he thought, if the Christians have a caste system, I might as well remain a Hindu. And he did. He remained a Hindu. And later he said, he's quoted as saying, "If it weren't for Christians, I would be a Christian." If it weren't for Christians, I would be a Christian. What's the point of all of this? What I'm trying to say is, be careful having a caste system in your church. These are the bus kids. These are the church kids. We do that. Okay, we do that, and we understand what you mean.
We've done it, yeah.
Okay, we said that before. Those are the church kids. These are the church kids. These are the bus kids. These are church kids. And sometimes the bus kids get treated different. They don't get all the attention from the congregation and the pastor that all the church kids do. And they feel inferior. They feel less than. We don't want a caste system in our church. We want everybody, whether you come here on a bus, a van, whether you walk or ride a horse. It doesn't matter how you get here. You belong to a body and a family. We're a family here. And there's not just this group and then there's that group. We're all the group. We're all together in this. So be careful using terms, those are the bus kids, these are the church kids. Let's work very hard to integrate everybody into a body, into a family at your church.
So build a team, and we kind of touched on that. So we're going to run.
Number 4.
This is number 4. Build a team. We touched on that. It helps you when you have to step away. But one of the things, get your kids involved in the ministry. That's very, very important. Like I said, you want to keep your kids, involve them in the ministry.
First line would be, you can't do it alone. Second is, take young people with you. All right, let's finish up real quick.
It's worth
about
it.
5
Just
minutes.
It's worth it. Real quick.
Number 5, it's worth it. It's worth it.
So a lot of times, like I said earlier, it seems like we're barely inching. But if we can say anything to you today that you can walk away with, it's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. My mom's here this morning, and she can correct me if I remember her story right or wrong, but she was a bus kid at one time. Her parents got saved later, and she continued going to church, but she was a bus kid. And I'm a third-generation Christian this morning. Is it worth it? Absolutely, it's worth it. You can talk to different people. I believe Brother Durkee, if we can use the term bus kid after that sermon that you gave us.
Yes.
But it's worth it. And if we don't grow weary in well-doing, because we can get tired in doing good, but there's going to be a fruit at the end. And you know what? Sometimes we might not see it, because some of us plow, some of us throw the seed, some of us water. Oh, and the people that are blessed to go out and get the harvest. I envy those people in a good holy envy, if I can have that, right? Sometimes we don't see it, and for whatever reason, God sometimes doesn't allow us to see it. But there is going to be a harvest, because his word won't come back void. And if I believe God's word, I have to believe that promise. And so whenever I give the gospel to somebody, whenever I show love to somebody, I know whether I see me inching across that battlefield or not, God is still moving forward. His kingdom is still going forward, and it's worth everything that we do.
What is success in ministry? We have to think it's got to be numbers. It's got to be this. It's got to be the other thing. But let's look at Micah 6:8 real quick. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? What's he expect of us? But to do justly, is the first line, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. There's no mention of numbers there. And this is what God is expecting of us. This is success in his eyes. To do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. Ministry success is doing what God asks you to do, despite of what you expect, despite of what you think it might mean to be successful. And you think sharing the gospel is teaching them how to be saved and how to know God. That's showing them mercy, treating them with love, supporting them, defending the poor, welcoming them into your church. That's treating them justly, right? Getting out of your comfort zone, socializing with the down and out, the less educated, the lower class, that's walking humbly. What you're doing is meeting all of these requirements. This is what God requires of us. And lastly, ministry is pleasing to God, whether you see big numbers or not. Just being involved and loving and doing justly and walking humbly before the Lord. We want to close real quick by reading the poem that you have there, Through the Eyes of the Bus Worker. Through the Eyes of the Bus Worker. Some see a fight, a push, and a shove.
I see a desperate cry for love.
Some see a brat. He acts so bad.
I see a boy who's never met his dad.
Some see the messes and the trouble they give.
I see the poverty in the places where they live.
Some see a teenager who won't dress right.
I see a girl who has to protect herself at night.
Some see a smart mouth, disrespectful and loud.
I see a kid made fun of by a crowd.
Some see a woman who comes just to use.
I see a lady by a drunken husband abused.
Some see a drug addict, withered and worn.
I see a soul the Lord wants reborn.
Some see the dirt, the filth, and the rot.
I see a kid who without Jesus doesn't have a shot.
Some see a crook whom you don't trust much.
I see a man who needs the Lord's touch.
Some see a bunch of heathen who holler and yell.
I see a kid with parents in jail.
Some see a teenager who gives a lot of flack.
I see a boy whose whole family is on crack.
Broken homes, broken lives, those without hope.
They need compassion and God's grace to cope.
For every little girl who lies awake hungry at night.
Lord, help me to keep in the fight.
For every scared boy who sees his mommy get hit.
Lord, help me to be faithful and never to quit.
For every mommy who needs a new start.
Lord, help me to show her how to ask you into her heart.
For every man on whom sin has its hold.
Lord, help me to make sure the old story is told.
The Lord to me his mercy has shown.
Lord, help me to reach out so others may make heaven their home.
May others judge gently when these folks they see.
If not for God's grace, that's where all of us would be.
Amen. Thank you for your kind attention.